Gary, thing number one, the April PCE we're talking about, up 2.7%. What are the implications?
So first, let's explain what the PCE is. It's the Personal Consumption Expenditures Index. And the reason it's actually the preferred inflation gauge of the Federal Reserve. And the reason they look at that is the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, which is what people typically refer to when they're talking about inflation. That's a hypothetical basket, right? They sort of weight things the way they do. The PCE more closely matches people's actual expenditures. So if people are spending more, you see that in the PCE. If they're spending less, you see that. And so in some ways, it's a more accurate way to measure how families are being affected by inflation. And so the April PCE came in up 2.7% and up 0.3% versus last month. So first of all, 0.3% doesn't sound like a lot, right? It's like saying we have something that's $100 and next month it's $100.30. And people say, oh, why is that a big deal? And the answer is that 0.3% monthly annualizes to 3.7%. That's almost double what the Fed is looking for their inflation target. The core PCE, and that's the PCE excluding food and energy, that was up 0.2% monthly and up 2.8% annually. So all of those numbers were basically in line with expectations. There were no surprises there. The one thing that was kind of interesting is spending had been reported the prior 2 months as up 0.8%. Those are huge numbers. Those annualized to much larger numbers. They had been revised down to 0.7%. And then last month, spending was up only 0.2%. So they went from 0.8 to 0.2. That's a huge cut. And our view on it is the consumer may be tapped out. There's just been too much spending. Wages are not keeping up with inflation. And, we talked before last week about weak revenue at Target. And then last week, we saw declining same-store sales at Best Buy. All of these are indications that, it's just 1 month. So we'll see what happens over the next few months. But right now, it looks like the consumer might be running out of steam a little bit.
We had the Hawks and the Doves both having conversations about this after the fact and after these reports came out, with the Doves declaring immediate victory, right? Do we see much movement over the next 3-4 months, let's say, with elections coming up? Is there a clear winner? I know, as usual, we're still in the higher for longer, but I mean, how much movement do we actually see, if any, over these next couple months?
Well, so what happened was as soon as the report came out, it was in line with expectations. And the doves are people who prefer lower, they favor lower interest rates. And they were all over Twitter or X saying, hey, we win, the Fed's going to have to cut rates. And the Hawks, that's the other side, the people who prefer higher interest rates were saying, what are you kidding me? You're annualizing to almost 4%. You just had a 2.8% core number. These numbers have flattened out, inflation's sticky. But these were just people talking their book or yapping on social media. It's not really relevant. Our view here is that higher for longer is the way we're going to go. I don't think it's at all likely that the Fed changes the Fed funds rate at this meeting. And there are some people who think they might cut when we get out to like September or October. My view is at that point, we're really close to an election. And the Fed, they like to avoid the appearance of being politically conflicted. If they change rates close to an election, one side's going to be saying you're favoring those guys. And I just don't see it as that likely. I think we're going to be stuck at the current, 5.3% for a little while now. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but that's where we are.